On Sunday, the Mexican military killed the most powerful drug lord on the planet. His name was Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes. They called him El Mencho. He ran the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, the single largest supplier of fentanyl into the United States. Within hours, his cartel set Mexico on fire. 20 states, burning vehicles on highways, roadblocks in every direction, tourists trapped in hotels with no food, flights canceled, cities locked down, more than 70 people dead in 48 hours. Everyone is covering the violence. Nobody is covering what this means for you. What happens to fentanyl in your city? What happens to drug prices on American streets? What happens if you're traveling to Mexico? What this does to the border? And whether killing the king actually kills the kingdom, or makes it worse. That's what this video is. Let's get into it. Before we talk about what happens next, you need to understand who they just killed. Because this isn't some mid-level dealer. This is the most wanted man in the Western Hemisphere. Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes grew up dirt poor in the state of Michoacan. He grew avocados, dropped out of primary school, crossed into the U.S. illegally, got arrested in California in 1994 for heroin trafficking, served 3 years in a U.S. prison, got deported back to Mexico, became a police officer in Jalisco, then went right back into the drug trade. By 2009, he co-founded the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, cjng. Within 15 years, he turned it into the most powerful criminal organization in Mexico. The DEA considers it as powerful as the Sinaloa cartel. It operates in 21 of Mexico's 32 states. It has a presence in all 50 U.S. states. The U.S. State Department designated it a foreign terrorist organization in February 2025. The cartel's specialty? Fentanyl, cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin. They traffic it all. But fentanyl is what made them a threat to American national security. At the peak, the U.S. was losing over 100,000 people a year to overdoses. The Jalisco cartel was responsible for a significant portion of that supply. El Mencho had a $15 million bounty on his head from the U.S. government. He was indicted multiple times in American courts. The FBI called his organization Mexico's most powerful trafficking operation. He was the single most wanted fugitive in the Americas. And here's the thing that made him different. He was invisible. Only a handful of photographs of him existed, all decades old. He operated like a ghost. He ran a military-style operation. His cartel used drones, rocket launchers, armored vehicles, submarines designed by Russian naval engineers. He once shot down a Mexican military helicopter. He attempted to assassinate Mexico City's police chief in broad daylight. This was not a street dealer. This was the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar criminal empire. And on Sunday afternoon, the Mexican army killed him. Here's how it went down. Sunday, February 22nd, Mexican Special Forces, with intelligence support from the United States, launched an operation in the town of Tapalpa in Jalisco. It's a small town about 2 hours southwest of Guadalajara. They found El Mencho. A firefight broke out. 4 cartel members were killed on the spot. El Mencho and 2 bodyguards tried to flee into the woods. All 3 were hit. They were taken into custody, loaded onto a helicopter, and died in transit to Mexico City. 2 more cartel members were arrested. The military seized armored vehicles, rocket launchers, and a cache of weapons. 3 Mexican soldiers were wounded in the operation. And then the retaliation started. Within hours, cjng operatives launched coordinated attacks across more than 20 Mexican states. They torched buses, trucks, gas stations, convenience stores. They dragged vehicles onto highways and set them on fire. They erected hundreds of burning roadblocks. Guadalajara, Mexico's second largest city and a 2026 World Cup host city, went into a full lockdown. The governor declared Code Red. Public transportation was suspended. Every taxi and rideshare in Puerto Vallarta was shut down. Flights were canceled by Southwest, Alaska, Delta, and other carriers. The U.S. Embassy told all Americans in Jalisco, Michoacan, Tamaulipas, Guerrero, and Nuevo León to shelter in place. Tourists were stranded in hotels with no food. One American woman in Puerto Vallarta said she survived on 2 oranges and canned corn for an entire day. By Monday, more than 70 people were dead. 25 of them were Mexican National Guard members killed in 6 separate cartel attacks. Around 30 suspected cartel members were killed. The rest were civilians and officials caught in the crossfire. Now here's where it gets dangerous. When you kill the head of an organization this large, you don't just eliminate a person. You create a power vacuum. And power vacuums in the cartel world don't get filled peacefully. They get filled with blood. El Mencho's son, Ruben Oseguera, known as El Menchito, is in a U.S. prison. His wife was arrested in Mexico on money laundering charges. His brother is in a Mexican jail. His daughter is in custody. The family line of succession is broken. According to security analysts, there are at least 4 cjng commanders who could fight for control. His stepson, known as El-03, has family legitimacy but reportedly lacks influence with other commanders. Another figure, known as El Sapo, manages the cartel's recruitment and franchise operations. Less violent, more corporate. 2 others, Doblear and El Jardinero, are military-style operators who control territory through force. If none of them can consolidate power, the cartel fractures. And a fractured cartel is not a weaker cartel. It's a more chaotic one. We've seen this before. Last year, when Ismael El Mayo Zambada, the co-founder of the Sinaloa cartel, was captured in 2024, it triggered an internal civil war within Sinaloa. Different factions started killing each other. Violence spiked across entire regions. The fighting hasn't stopped. The same thing could happen to cjng, except cjng is structured differently. The DEA describes it as a franchise operation made up of roughly 90 sub-organizations across Mexico. When the central authority disappears, each franchise starts operating independently. Some will fight each other. Some will cut deals with rivals. Some will try to prove themselves through extreme violence. Experts at the Brookings Institution are already warning that violence could become more erratic and more locally lethal. The cartel's power shifts from vertical command to territorial chaos, and that chaos doesn't stay in Mexico. Let's talk about what this means for Americans, because there are real consequences here and nobody is breaking them down. Number 1, fentanyl. The Jalisco cartel is one of the 2 primary organizations trafficking fentanyl into the United States. The other is the Sinaloa cartel, which is already in the middle of its own internal war. That means both of the top fentanyl suppliers are now destabilized at the same time. In the short term, that could actually reduce fentanyl supply on American streets. Fentanyl overdose deaths had already dropped about 50% from their peak of 108,000. Disrupting cjng's operations could push that number down further. But here's the problem. When supply drops, the street-level dealers who distribute fentanyl in American cities start competing for what's left, and that competition turns violent. Law enforcement in Houston is already monitoring for exactly this. The Harris County Sheriff's Office posted publicly that they're watching for shifts in fentanyl supply and related criminal activity. There's also a purity problem. When supply chains get disrupted, the product that does make it through is often more inconsistent. That means the potency of fentanyl on the street becomes unpredictable. And unpredictable potency is what causes overdose spikes. Number 2, travel to Mexico. If you have plans to travel to Mexico in the next few months, pay attention. The U.S. State Department has issued warnings for multiple states: Jalisco, Michoacán, Tamaulipas, Guerrero, Nuevo León. These are all under elevated alerts. Puerto Vallarta and Guadalajara, 2 of the most popular destinations for American tourists, are in the heart of Jalisco. That's cjng's home base. The violence isn't targeting tourists directly, but when a cartel shuts down an entire city, you're trapped regardless of who they're after. Flights get canceled, roads get blocked, food runs out. You're stuck. And there's a much bigger concern on the horizon. The FIFA World Cup kicks off in June. Guadalajara is a host city. They're expecting 3 million visitors. 4 matches are scheduled there, including one featuring Mexico's national team. Security analysts are now questioning whether Mexico can contain the post-El Mencho violence before the tournament begins. Number 3, the border. cjng doesn't just traffic drugs, they traffic people. Migrant smuggling is a major revenue stream, especially through the state of Chiapas on the Guatemala border. When a cartel fractures, smuggling routes get rerouted, prices change, and the chaos at the US-Mexico border intensifies. The Trump administration designated cjng as a foreign terrorist organization and has been pressuring Mexico to take action against the cartels. This operation gives President Sheinbaum a major political win. Her government is claiming credit for the kill. But the administration in Washington has been clear. Killing one leader doesn't solve the problem if the organization survives. And historically, it doesn't. El Chapo was captured. The Sinaloa cartel didn't collapse. It fractured, and the violence got worse. The same pattern has repeated with nearly every major cartel takedown in Mexico's history. Analysts call it the kingpin strategy. You cut the head off the snake, and two more grow back. Number 4. The ripple effects. CJNG is not just a Mexican problem. It has trafficking routes that stretch through Colombia, Ecuador, and into Asia. It moves cocaine from South America, precursor chemicals from China, and fentanyl into the United States. When an organization this large destabilizes, the effects cascade across the entire hemisphere. Ecuador and Colombia could see violence spike as CJNG's cocaine networks get contested. Chinese precursor chemical suppliers may pivot to new buyers, and rival cartels, including Sinaloa factions, will try to absorb CJNG's territory and routes. That means more conflict, not less. Here's what you should actually do based on all of this. First, if you have travel plans to Mexico, check them now. Look at exactly where you're going. If your destination is in Jalisco, Michoacán, Colima, Nayarit, or Tamaulipas, reconsider. If you're going to Cancun, Riviera Maya, or other Caribbean-side destinations, the risk is lower but still elevated. Check the State Department's travel advisories. Buy travel insurance with cancellation coverage. Register with the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program. It's free and it gets you emergency alerts from the U.S. Embassy. Second, if you know someone who uses drugs, this is a critical moment. The fentanyl supply chain is about to get disrupted. That means the drugs that make it to American streets in the coming weeks and months will be more unpredictable than usual. The potency will vary batch to batch. This is when overdose spikes happen. If you know someone who uses, make sure they know about naloxone, Narcan. It reverses opioid overdoses. It's available over the counter at most pharmacies. This isn't a lecture, it's a practical step that saves lives during supply disruptions. Third, pay attention to the World Cup situation. If you were planning to attend matches in Guadalajara, keep a close eye on the security situation over the next 3 months. The Mexican government will deploy massive security forces, but the cartel's response to El Mencho's death is still unfolding. Monitor the news. Have backup plans. Fourth, understand that this is not over. The killing of El Mencho is the biggest blow to a Mexican cartel since the capture of El Chapo. But CJNG has 90 sub-organizations, billions in revenue, and operations in over 20 countries. One death does not dismantle that infrastructure. What it does is create instability. And instability in the cartel world means more violence in Mexico, potential fentanyl supply disruptions in the US, and a more unpredictable border situation. This will unfold over months and years, not days. Fifth, watch what happens at the State of the Union tonight. Trump is giving his State of the Union address tonight. El Mencho's death hands him a major talking point. The US provided the intelligence for this operation. Expect him to use it. But listen carefully to what he says about next steps. Whether he pushes for more military-style operations in Mexico, whether he increases border enforcement, whether he frames this as a win or as evidence that more needs to be done. What he says tonight could shape border and drug policy for the rest of the year. Let me pause for a minute. Mexico just killed the most powerful drug lord in the Western Hemisphere. The man who ran the cartel that sends more fentanyl into the United States than any other organization. The man with a $15 million bounty. The ghost who evaded capture for over a decade. And within hours of his death, his cartel proved exactly why killing one man doesn't kill an organization. 20 states went up in flames. 70 people died. Cities shut down. An entire country held its breath. We've seen this story before. El Chapo was captured in 2016. The Sinaloa cartel didn't die. It split into warring factions that are still killing each other today. The Medellin cartel survived Pablo Escobar. The Cali cartel survived the Rodriguez brothers. Every time a kingpin falls, the structure survives and the violence spikes. The question isn't whether cjng survives El Mencho's death. It will. The question is what it becomes. A more fractured, more chaotic, more unpredictable version of itself, fighting internally for control while still pushing fentanyl, cocaine, and meth across the US border. And that chaos affects real Americans. The fentanyl on your streets gets more dangerous. The border gets more volatile. Travel to Mexico gets riskier. And the cartel war that's been building for years just entered a new, more unstable chapter. So here's everything again. Check your Mexico travel plans. Get informed on fentanyl risks if it touches your life. Watch the World Cup security situation. Understand that this is the beginning of a power struggle, not the end of a cartel. And pay attention to what comes out of Washington tonight. This story is going to develop fast over the next few weeks. If you want to stay ahead of it, subscribe. I'll keep breaking it down. If you haven't seen the tariff video because your grocery bill and your car payment are also under attack right now, I broke the whole thing down right here. I'll see you in the next one.